So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Reinis Znotiņš, and I'm honored today to take a lead on plenary session on cyber resilience as the pillar. Today we have two very exciting speakers. So first of all, Varis Teivāns will cover. He is deputy director of CERT.LV. And Varis will cover a broader picture of cyber resilience and current cybersecurity situation in Latvia and also in geopolitical context. And then we'll have Greg Markell sitting right here next to me. So President and CEO of Riga Canada Cyber Solutions Incorporation. And we'll talk about the importance of insurance solutions particularly, but not only to ensure clients' cyber and privacy needs. But before we start that, afterwards we'll be joined by a couple of other people who professionals, I would say, not people who I'll introduce after the keynote speakers. But before we go to that part, let me just give a brief introduction on why we are talking about this at all and what is cyber resilience as such. So we decided to take this topic, cyber resilience, because it's important for companies. It's basically essential for the companies these days. It has been like that, one can say it has been like that for a decade already, but today with the global situation changing and Russian threats, Chinese activities and so on, we see that this is becoming even more important. And so it's also, I guess, important to define cyber resilience and tell a little bit, maybe for those who are not that familiar with this term, what it means. And the definition I found that feels the most relevant or most appropriate for me is as follows. So cyber resilience is the ability of an organization to enable business acceleration, enterprise resiliency by preparing for, responding to, and recovering from cyber threats. A cyber resilient organization can adapt to unknown and known crises, threats, adversities, and challenges. So this is a short definition, but we'll have a panel of experts and also two great speakers to unlock this topic broader and tell it and explain it in more details, more than I can do, definitely. So I guess without further ado, I'll give floor to, first of all, Varis Teivāns, so Deputy Director of CERT.LV. And we're really hoping that Varis will cover a broader picture and talk about what is the situation in Latvia, how can we improve our cyber resilience, and how do Latvian Information Technology Security Incidents Response Institution, which is basically the main institution in Latvia covering cyber security, sees the picture as it is today. So Varis, without further ado, the floor is yours, 25 minutes plus 5 minutes for questions and answers. So be ready to prepare your questions after the presentation. Thank you.
Great. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me and thank you for the introduction. So as already introduced, my name is Varis Teivāns. I'm a Deputy Director at CERT.LV, which is a Latvian national and governmental CERT team. With high emphasis, we are responsible specifically for critical infrastructure protection, government, institution, municipalities, but overall the responsibility lies on the whole Latvian IP and domain space. And today I will provide a short situation report on threat landscape in Latvian cyberspace. And also I think a couple of my slides and points that I'll try to make hit the spot very well on cyber resilience topic that you have today. So the cybersecurity threat level currently in Latvia is assessed by CERT.LV as high. It is assessed as high since January 2022. Obviously, the threat level has been rising gradually for quite some time, and I think it's across the spectrum, not only in Latvia, but obviously Latvia and Baltic states, and not only this region, but specifically Latvia has been in the focus for Russian cyber actors for quite some time. Technical evidence from several incidents that we have been analyzing suggests that Russian Russian offensive cyber operations have been conducted in Latvia since 2007 at least. It pretty much goes in the same time range where for example, Agent BTZ malware, sophisticated malware called Agent BTZ was active since 2006, 2007, where they also compromised the US government networks. In that time, they basically also started to become active in Latvia. Afterwards, they were called Turla and still are called that way. But the actors are obviously many, and not only these are active. So currently, it looks like that sophisticated, at least several groups of sophisticated threat actors have been preparing something for at least a year. Also, technical evidence suggests that some of the high-value targets have been compromised at least since January 2021. And for some reason, they have been kept on ice, if you will, or nothing has been done with them. Just initial access has been granted to the threat actor, and then no further escalation or a lateral movement has been conducted, which is weird, to be honest. And usually financially motivated attackers do not do that. In this case, it might be that they were waiting for the right moment. It's my speculation, or maybe they were not able to work on multiple targets in such a broad spectrum simultaneously and were busy with something else. So this slide is intentionally left blank, basically, because unfortunately all the threat actors that have been attributed by us or security agencies currently are not disclosable. But most of them, as you might expect, are connected with Russian Federation and security services in Russian Federation. What is really important, I think, is not only the technical data itself, but being able to cross-correlate multiple sources, sharing with the industry and CERT community as well. CERT.LV also has become much more open on sharing technical indicators than we were before, even though there are some risks, obviously. But we are building, I would say, trusted technical community around CERT from the industry and government, so that we could share those indicators more efficiently. And it's done basically in real time through established communication channels. And also we heavily rely on a system called MISP, which I think has become almost an industry standard on IOC sharing across the globe. In this particular slide, I would like to demonstrate that through visual analysis, or in this particular case, a graph, it is quite easy to find out cross correlations between activities from the threat actors. And what is really interesting here, that on the upper side, it was a reconnaissance phase where the threat actors purchased several virtual private servers in a country that provides anonymity for such activities, or is not very cooperative with law enforcement. Then they conducted the first phase of attack, where they scanned for vulnerabilities, reconnaissance, etc. And after the compromise, which is good for analysis, actually, they didn't do very well on their security operations and conducted the post-exploitation phases and command and control from the same networks. This in the middle, the red dots are compromised assets by the same threat actor, and for a month or so, their activities that we were able to track highlight quite well how they operate and which targets have been compromised afterwards, after the reconnaissance phase. So as I said, the timeline is January last year, and they reactivate on March or April this year. There have been several incidents that I think highlight how people tend to rely on magic black boxes or some solutions that maybe they even serve their purpose, but what is forgotten that the human or operator or SOC team is the essential part of information security. And if you don't build a good team around those solutions, it's worthless basically. It's like your Lamborghini and Ferrari is just collecting dust in the garage. And this is what happens in several incidents that we have been investigating both in private and public sector. Currently it looks like that some groups of those threat actors are going after MSPs, like managed service providers or companies that provide IT services or developing software development services, and when they compromise them, we do not think that they are primary targets. Probably their clients are, and this is very smart move from the point of view of supply chain integrity attacks, right? So similar stuff has happened also in US and other countries where they compromise the MSP and then gain access because this particular company has to maintain some systems, provide some services, troubleshoot stuff. They have usually VPN tunnels to their clients, credentials to their content management systems, etc., etc. Also code base itself. So with one shot, you basically get a lot of access, and this is something that has to be understood and monitored and protected and properly configured as well, both from the client perspective and the service provider. What we have found out that unfortunately in many cases people don't even spend enough time on segmenting or zoning their networks, which is like a basic security measure. You don't need any fancy equipment. Basically, you don't need even next generation firewalls. Just simple access lists would save the day. But unfortunately, it's also forgotten. In many cases, we have found that. So I like to note that these incidents that I'm talking about currently, they have happened not because of the general users that click on things and do not pay attention to details, like someone may think, but because of professionals, right? So people who are technical. There have been several incidents where also developers have left intentionally or unintentionally, probably without any bad intention, but just forgotten Git repositories on their client systems. And this basically, in some cases, means that everything is served on the plate for the threat actor. If you forget the Git repository, which contains database credentials or some other code snippets with API keys and other sensitive data, you don't even need any hacking. You just need to know how to access the Git repository, and you have everything basically to compromise the asset. So simple precautions, procedures, again, would save the day, nothing fancy. Undocumented links is something that is very, very dangerous and might look very simple, but could create significant damage. And this is something that we and our colleagues from the industry and also Estonian colleagues in cyber defense, NATO cyber defense in Tallinn, train each year with undocumented links being created on lock shields exercise, and people tend to fall for that trick every single year. And in this case, it's a real life situation where there has been an incident in a government agency where they actually had a pretty good network, very well covered with firewalls, IDS systems, etc. VPN tunnels were necessary. This is something that you can see on the right side. But on the left side, one technical employee decided that for managing the on-prem service, he could connect a 4G router without a permission or coordinating that with the management, and just because it's convenient. So he actually did that for half a year. This router was connected to this network, and nobody knew that it is connected to the government agency, because it's an undocumented link. It's not firewalled. It was not properly configured, and server was exposed with remote desktop protocol service to the outside world. And it took like half a year for the attackers to compromise the server, which was exposed in that way, and the consequences were quite significant, I must say. Again, it could be prevented by, I think, education, like raising the security posture also amongst the technical staff, so that they understand that it's not okay to do things like that, and also preventive measures on monitoring, like we did here. We conducted a threat hunting operation in that particular case, where we monitor specific behavior of each and every single process that is connecting to the network, and finding out if the behavior suggests it's suspicious or not. In this case, it's possible to identify LTE dongles that are connected to the system. You can actually see that the process itself suggests that it's connected to LMT internet, which is Latvian mobile telephone and operator in Latvia. And we found out that 6 more systems in this particular agency were using LTE dongles in their configuration. So again, undocumented links, right? So I would say that in the current situation, threat hunting capability is a must. If you're a significant player in the cyber services or software development or government agency or critical infrastructure, I think this capability is a must. And there are plenty of tools which are also open source, and have to spend such big amounts of money to create them. So we have 2 setups. I would like to share with one of them here. It's I would say like a rapid deployment kit, where we have Sysmon, Velociraptor, Suricata, and Zeek IDS. Gitea for storing the findings, and we track the progress with Git issues, which I think is very convenient, especially for also for non-technical stuff. So Git issues can be browsed also in the web, not only from the command line. Cape Sandbox, which is also open source solution, and MikroTik routers to create a appropriate network with VPN connections to the mothership. And I think this particular setup proves to be quite useful and I would say affordable. The downside, of course, in all those open source cases is that you have to have trained staff and dedicated personnel who can maintain this properly. But similar services can be acquired from the commercial sector as well. Tools and procedures that I think also are useful. I have shared those links in the slide. You can browse them later if you're interested. But I would like to highlight Yara, which is called like pattern matching Swiss knife. Basically, it's a tool that you can use for creating rule-specific signatures to hunt on to perform threat hunting on the system, similar like the antivirus software does it. Basically, every single antivirus vendor, I think, relies heavily on Jara as well, including VirusTotal platform, if you have heard of it, which is quite popular. Loki is something similar. It also relies on Jara heavily, but it provides an open source rule base, which is, I think, very convenient and useful to run during your threat hunts. And as I mentioned before, those tools like Sysmon EDR solutions, Security Onion, ELK or HELK stack are also, I think, very useful in those cases. So the Latvian cybersecurity system allows us to mobilize cyber unit in National Guard. So we have a National Guard that it has a cyber unit. 120 active individuals currently are there. Obviously, we do not mobilize all of them when we need that, but we have done so. The mobilization, I mean, of particular individuals for 4 times already in real incidents, and I think it's very useful experience for both sides. So the InfoSec community, as I said, is growing, and I think it's also very, very useful and important. Currently, we have gathered almost 400 individuals. I think it's even more now. It's growing every day. And this is the channel where we can share and share some indicators and get some feedback fast, which proves to be very useful in current times. And also this channel is used, and not only that, but obviously we have an up-to-date database of responsible IT security responsible personnel in government and critical infrastructure institutions, which are briefed on a regular basis. So a couple of those more visible actors, but I would evaluate them as not so worrying, even though for the general public, I think they have been more visible than those advanced actors. So some of them are also demonstrating not very good understanding of open source intelligence and targeting strategy, because in this particular case, this Killnet group, which is Russian hacktivist group, DDoSing Latvia basically every single day since May 9. They've took responsibility for DDoSing, as they said, Ministry of Interiors, but in this case it was Department of Environment and Housing in Riga, Riga city. But they thought it's a Ministry of Interior just because the domain name contained MVD, which in Russian is Ministerstvo Vnутренних дел. So they thought that if it's in Russia MVD, then everywhere else it's the same, which is, I would say, kind of funny. But obviously, some of their activities have been noted by the general citizen because they have been able to disrupt some services. For example, Inbox.LV, which is local free email provider, Mobility service, which provides application services for purchasing transport tickets, public transport tickets, and parking tickets. This has been disrupted for a day as well. And yesterday, they've been able to disrupt services for public railways, so that people also were not able to purchase tickets for several hours. But in most cases, I must say that we are quite successful on protecting the infrastructure, especially the government-related infrastructure from those DDoS attacks, because Latvia has a government co-funded DDoS protection service hosted by Latvian Radio and Television Center, and it proves to be very useful. So in most cases, people don't even notice that their services have been attacked. There have been also couple of very sophisticated attacks that are using compromised accounts in e-school system that is used by school children, teachers, and parents as well. And in this case, extremely well conducted operation. It looks like a financially motivated, but it's really weird that the Latvian language is absolutely perfect in this case, and those decoy messages. Basically, the end user could be saved only if educated. So this is also a very important part. If you pay attention, then you can right away see that the domain name is in India.in, but for untrained eye, maybe you just pay attention to the first part. It's eclass.lv, and if you click on it, you're provided with a download link for a malicious file. So what we suggest is also do some simple precaution measures like disabling HTML on your email clients changes quite a lot. You can see on the left side it's phishing email from the attackers trying to mimic a Citadel bank, and on the left side it looks quite legit. The only suspicious thing I would say is that on the upper side you can see that the from email is not from Citadel. On the right side though, you can see exactly the same email with HTML functionality disabled, and I think it's absolutely charming for the simple user that it's the whole truth is revealed. You can see that after disabling HTML, the email doesn't look so trustworthy, right? So that you can straight away see that the domain name is not again from Citadel.LV, but is malbeeves.com, and it should be suspicious, I think. So a couple of the next slides contain technical information, but I'll skip through them. The main point here is that every single attack can be detected, even if it's a 0-day. It can be detected if a proper configuration, monitoring, and SOC capability is in place. It's just a matter of how you prepare for it. And I think this tweet is particularly on spot, also with your today's topic of cyber resilience. It's that every cyber battle is won before it's fought. I think it's so true. Especially if you prepare your infrastructure monitoring capability in response, you have won your cyber battle. And obviously you cannot avoid being attacked, but you can avoid being negligent. And if you prepare, you should be ready. I also like the point that was made at the very beginning, that there will be a talk or discussion on cyber insurance. I think it's a very good trend, not only because someone can be insured and get some money back in case of incident. I think the biggest benefit from cyber insurance is that because the insurance companies would like to minimize the risks also, because they probably are not interested to pay right and left. They make sure that the client follows some at least basic security rules, have some procedures in place, so you cannot be insured if you are negligent. So I think this is also a very good point. And maybe some of you have noticed that there has been quite a lot of hype around the latest Microsoft Office 0-day circulating around, and also it is used by several APT groups already. And this guy, I think, also made very good point on that he admits that yes, it's trending, etc. But have you tackled macros downloads from the internet, zipped JS files and ISOs and other containers, right? So even though it's 0-day, it probably has not appreciably increased your attack surface. Again, I totally agree with this. And in most cases, people tend to panic on some sophisticated attacks, but they're totally not ready to respond on very, very unsophisticated ones. So from CERT.LV to help protect the general citizens and also government infrastructure, we provide active protection service or DNS firewall service that is called DNS Mūris. And basically everyone is free to use it. We're also considering to create an app that the solution could be more easily enabled on mobile devices. But as I said, so it's quite simple to start use it at your household or corporate infrastructure. It doesn't matter. So I think it's last slide, and this is a rhetorical question: is this attack that I'm currently describing in this slide is advanced, right? So there are quite a lot of cases where you can see that the management, after the attack or during the attack, they're interested. Are we in the situation that advanced actors are targeting us? And I think in most cases it's totally not important. Are they advanced or no? It's just a matter of are you prepared or not? And in this case, we have investigated an incident where the company where it happened was ISO 27001 certified, which is very, very weird, because in this company, administrator passwords were 4 symbols. The main admin logs into workstations with domain admin credentials, which is, I think, catastrophic practice. Those who have conducted penetration tests or red teaming exercises probably know what I'm talking about here. So Active Directory is exposed with RDP service on the internet, no system hardening, insufficient logging, and some of the client Linux servers have not been patched for at least 2 years. No threat hunting capability, and when the assets are compromised, simple tools, very well known, I think, for the most protection services and antivirus software like Mimikatz, are run to exfiltrate the credentials from the domain. Is it advanced? Definitely no. So again, I think if we prepare and do our job well, I mean, every single one of us, not only CERT.LV, then we could be much, much more resilient. So thank you for attention, and I'm open to questions if I had time.
Thank you, Varis. Great presentation. A round of applause to Varis, please. Yes, Varis, so thank you for finding time, really some really good thoughts on your presentation and a nice overview. I'll give opportunity for the auditorium to ask questions, and then just raise your hand. I'll walk to you and give you the mic if you have questions. Yes, I see one question. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Gatis, and I ask you a question, but you stated that people are not using precocious methods in here. Then my question is that how you think that threat landscape after 9th of May have changed? Are we prepared to not? That in Latvia won't happen, this Estonian scenario from 2007 after they demolished the monument of Alyosha. Or do you have any kind of suggestions what to do for the people to make them do some precautious actions?
So I guess there are several questions. Are we prepared? So my answer is that overall, as a nation and government institutions as well, I think are prepared. I would always would like that they are prepared better and more, but Latvia has done quite a lot to ensure that there's a visibility, especially in the government and critical infrastructure, as well as municipalities. This has been achieved for years. Just because there's a visibility, that you also know much more, and because you know much more, you can tell how bad it is when it's bad. So this creates like a different perspective. And I think overall the level of preparedness is quite well. Of course, there are some institutions where it's catastrophic. I must say that in a couple of institutions that we have conducted some of those threat hunting activities, it's very, very bad. And I think this attention from our side is also necessary every now and then, because to show that it's bad and that it should be fixed as soon as possible. It's also important for the management in those particular institutions, and maybe even Parliament, so that they look for necessary budget if it's not been in attention for years. So yeah, what we can do to be more resilient and be more prepared. all those things that I mentioned in my presentation. So basically, if you're a Windows administrator, just pay attention that you have configured your Windows environment according to best practices. And CERT.LV has published quite a lot of material on that topic. Quite a lot of material in high detail is available from CISA in US, from Microsoft. So the information is all over the place. It's just a matter of configuring it right and creating necessary measures to be able to identify that you're under attack. Have they been successful? Have they been able to move laterally forward in your infrastructure? So you cannot be sure that you're not going to be attacked. Most probably you will, but it's very important that you prepare for that.
Yes, Varis, thank you so much for the answer. Any other questions? Okay, Varis, really thank you so much for finding a time, and I guess we are, to be on the schedule, we actually need to move forward to our next speaker, our friend Greg Markell from Canada. Greg is currently a president and a CEO of Riga Canada Cyber Solutions, and he'll mostly speak about insurance. Varis already told some good words about the importance of insurance to establish and enable the cyber resilience. So we haven't talked about this enough, I believe, in Latvia. So it would be great to hear more about your personal experience and also like maybe see how it is in Canada in comparison. We can compare then how we see it in Latvia.
Yeah,
So go ahead. Yeah, the
thanks,
floor is
Reinis.
yours.
Yeah, thank you. It's not often that I'm not the one scaring the crap out of everybody, so thank you to Varis for that. But no, it's a pleasure to be here, and we see the exact same thing in Canada. I'm going to focus a little bit on the insurance aspect of things, but it really does dovetail and blend in with everything that Varis was saying, because what we are looking at and what we are looking for on the insurance side of things are resilient businesses. That's what we want to ensure. We don't want to lose money. The insurance industry is not a benevolent industry in itself. The house always wins. And so when we're looking at the loss figures that we're seeing right now across Canada, the US, the UK, Israel, Australia, and many other European countries as well, the threat actors are winning. Businesses are losing. We're losing, Canadian companies are losing billions with a B of dollars in GDP to sophisticated threat actors that are coming after businesses. And so it's a big challenge, the legalese, but I figured I'd take a couple of minutes because everybody's just had lunch and talking about insurance is boring. So I will spend very little time on this, but I'll just give everybody a little bit of a sense of what the insurance contract looks like. And so the easiest way to think about the cyber insurance policy is that there's two sides to it. There's your first party, which I call expense coverages. These are the costs that the business will sustain when it gets hit. So when something happens, these are the coverages that come into place to really try and remediate the situation. So in Canada and the US, you really want a breach coach to be the first person that comes in. And that's always a lawyer. You want them to be experienced, but you want them to have a knowledge of what legislative issues is the business going to run into. So making decisions on things like, do I have to notify people? When do we have to report this to the government? Do we have to report this to law enforcement? All of these things are decisions that are going to fall on a business owner's plate at the time that their networks are compromised. So having that lawyer, and they really act as the quarterback to the situation themselves. And there's a couple of reasons why. So the first and main reason is that it provides privilege on anything that comes out. Because as soon as the lawyer is called, their first call, they're going to assess the situation and see, okay, do we need help here? And that, if the answer is yes, then that's where the forensics companies come in. the digital forensics. So they're going to find out the who, what, where, when, why, and how. And the issue that comes up oftentimes is if that information is sensitive, or let's say it's an inbox, it's someone's email inbox, and that has strategy for the business, that has anything else contained in it. If the lawyer is not the person that engages the forensics company, then that forensics report that comes out is now discoverable if it proceeds to litigation. So then obviously you figure out what happens with the information itself, and you may need some public relations or crisis communications support. Those are the most common elements of your first-party coverages. But also in first-party coverages, which are causing adverse loss effects across the entire insurance industry right now, is what's called business interruption loss. And so that is your opportunity cost loss. That's lost profits as a result of the hack and downtime of the networks. So that ends up being a very big first-party cost. But all of these first-party costs and the expenses are really in place to prevent the second part of the policy from being triggered, which is your liability coverages. So when someone sues you. So you go through and you do everything you can to prevent your organization from getting sued by your stakeholders, by affected parties, by affected companies. So that's the policy in a nutshell. So these are Canadian numbers, and the global numbers are very similar. But I was saying billions, what needs to be understood here too is Canada is not as sophisticated as the United States from an insurance purchasing posture. The US still dominates the total number, the global cyber insurance premiums that are placed. They still account for roughly 75% of global premiums into the insurance industry. So Canada is quite small. We've seen good growth in our insurance industry over the years. Last year, 2020 to 2021, we grew just over $105 million in total policy premiums. But this is the next slide that is really where the cyber insurance community in Canada is starting to lock down a little bit. These are the overall numbers as reported into our Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, which is the regulatory body that handles our banks, pension companies, insurance companies. So the data is out there. It's publicly available. I use it for some trend analysis, but basically that trend from 2020 is we can't have another one of those years. We can't afford to. And Canada, as mentioned, we're small relative to the United States, relative to other purchasers of the coverage. And at Ridge Canada, we only work on Canadian companies. And so this is detrimental. Everything that Varis was saying are messages that I deliver to business owners every day in Canada. And so we're all saying the same thing, which is important. But yeah, that 601 million out, only about 25% of Canadian companies purchase some form of cyber insurance. So that 601 million is what's been insured. And we're in the billions that we're losing. And that's only what's reported as well. So we can't catch what we don't know about. And we can't fix, law enforcement can't fix what they don't know about. So again, the reason I use this slide is mainly because it just shows that even in Canada, we really need to attract foreign investment into these contracts. 75% of our businesses are covered by foreign capital when it comes to the insurance contracts. So, for example, my business, we underwrite on behalf of Lloyd's of London syndicates. And so that money is coming from all over the world, but concentrated out of London. And so we're still reliant on that. And Canadian businesses to date have been relatively apathetic when it comes to their cyber risk and their cyber hygiene. And so what the message is, to Varis's point, is we're looking at what are the minimum standards in order to be insurable. And we need to do that if we want to continue to attract foreign investment to back these contracts themselves. So some of the trends. The slide, Varis' slide with nothing mentioned on it is very funny, and because it's all ransomware right now. That's what business owners are worried about. And ransomware is an extortion-based tactics where someone gets into your networks and then finds out what is key to the organization, targets it, and encrypts it, and so you don't have access to it. And then they extort you for typically Bitcoin. We've seen them moving to Monero to get access to your data back so you can continue on operating. So you can see why the business interruption coverage becomes fairly important, because network downtime leads to loss opportunity costs and revenues, and we're seeing businesses really get hurt by it. So the rest of it is insurance jargon, and but long and short, what's happening is because the insurance industry is losing so much money year over year in all jurisdictions from a cyber perspective, reinsurance premiums so the insurance that the insurance companies buy has gone up substantially. And about 60% of all cyber premiums are reinsured by the same 4 companies. And so what we're going to see and what we're seeing right now is a trickle down. So prices are going up, demand is increasing, demand for the coverage is increasing, supply of the capacity or the capital that backs the contracts is decreasing, and that, we're really testing the elasticity of the insurance product itself. And unfortunately, cyber insurance is not inelastic. So, companies don't need to buy it. And so what we're finding is lots more want it because they are more, they're focusing in, they're hearing it in the news, they're talking to people. In Canada, you can't really talk to, you go out and you talk to 12 people and 1 or 2 of them have had an incident or know someone that's had a company like that they work for that's been affected by it. So it's very, very common, and the key here is resiliency. From an insurance standpoint, we know people are going to get hit. The frequency of these incidents is increasing, but what we're trying to stop is the severity impact for when it does happen. And the reason that we're seeing the frequency, especially in the ransomware world, is that the threat groups that are perpetrating these acts are run as businesses. They are full out businesses. We got a little bit of intelligence on the Conti group when there was a Ukrainian defector back in January. And they leaked a number of emails, but it just exposed to the rest, to the general community, what the security community already knew, is that they are very sophisticated. They have a human resources department. They have they have recruiters, they have everything. And it's, I've been through scenarios where companies at the end of it have gotten a survey asking, hey, how was your experience? How did we do? Like, they're following up for customer service responses on this stuff. How did we do from an extortion perspective? It's so cheeky, but it's ridiculous. I've had companies where, we're on the phone with the lawyer at the time, and okay, hang on a second, Greg, someone's calling, and they pick up the phone and they're like, oh, that was the threat actor asking if they needed help acquiring crypto in order to pay the extortion demand. Like, they are full out trying to support getting their money, and they are unabashed about doing it. So it's they're run like businesses, and again, you don't even have to be a target. It's not. That was the biggest thing that I've heard from Canadian companies, because I focus on small, mid-sized business, and so it's, oh, Greg, we're Canadian. We're nice. Nobody's going to hit us. We're not a target, and I don't have anything that anybody would want. The reality is, you don't have to be. You're as a business, you are generating income. You are generating money. That is something that everybody else wants, and so you not being able to generate that puts you in a position where you will do something to get back to profitability. And so the disruption, and it doesn't have to be targeted. Again, it can be something as simple as someone clicking on a link that they shouldn't have. That can be the first originator of this. So it's a big challenge, and we see the same thing in Canada that Varis was saying. The lack of awareness. amongst people. People aren't sure what they should or shouldn't be clicking on, and so it's tough. So expectations. This is centered around the insurance world. Rates are going up. We've seen the average cost of these policies increase by over 50% year over year. So business owners are challenged when looking at that. How do you forecast? How do you budget? A lot of business owners are choosing not to forego purchasing it when they had it the year previous, and so it's a challenge. It's a very big challenge. I think that the insurance world is sort of normalizing. Truthfully, in Canada, we are behind. We are still too price conscious. I was just in London. I was just talking to underwriters at Lloyd's, and when it comes down to it, it's simple math. I mean, for Canadian companies, unfortunately, we are opportunity cost loss to underwriters. Why would an underwriter at Lloyd's look at a Canadian business that pays, that's looking to pay 0.5x of the same operations in the United States, and then on top of that, you compound that with the fact that our foreign exchange is, 70 cents on the dollar. There's far more. It's far more lucrative for underwriters to spend time on United States-based business, European-based business, Australian-based business, who are looking at the actual. Looking at the exposure of risk transfer. And so it's we've got to do something in Canada. Our businesses are waking up to the fact that when it happens, it sucks. It is not fun. A former colleague of mine called it the hair on fire scenario. Everybody's running around and nobody knows what to do. That's the case. It's mass panic when these things happen because it's taking away your livelihood. And something as simple as someone coming in that's calm, that has a plan and is executing on the plan, reminding someone that if this happens, you're the victim of a crime. It's important to remember, you are the victim here. So from a regulatory perspective, there are things that you have to do, but at the end of the day, these are criminal actors that are perpetrating these activities. So I threw this slide in because it was, this is what we tell businesses to do. So the way I tell Canadian companies is, look, if you want to buy an insurance policy, you have to be at least this tall to get on the ride. And these are some of the minimum hygiene requirements that we have for businesses in order for us to underwrite them. So when brokers bring us risks, we look at our applications and there needs to be at least these 5 things for small businesses, or we're not going to spend any time on it. Now, that doesn't matter what industry you operate in. It doesn't matter how big, how small you are. These tools, so multi-factor authentication for remote network access, that's multi-factor is a way of proving that it is actually you. So typically run by authenticator apps or SMS text messages. Once you put your password in, it's a second form of checking that it is actually you. So who's gaining access to your networks? Making sure that the perimeter is protected. So beyond that, the second point is really in response to ransomware and extortion demands. We want to see backups. This is something that we've been underwriting to for a number of years, probably a little bit more stringently than our peers. It is so important. It is actually paramount. There's some other things that belie this as well, like who has access within the organization to the backups that are segregated and offline. We typically want to see that minimized so it reduces the footprint, admin privileges only, and who's doing them. But the off-network backups, really what we're looking to is modern backups. I look for the 3-2-1 model. So 3 copies, 2 different places, and I always forget the last one part of it. But it's modern backups, incremental and image-based. When these things happen, it is much faster for an organization to recover. The third point has just become par for the course. It is standard now. We want to see organizations train their employees. And it is so inexpensive. We're talking dollars per employee per year. And there's a social benefit that comes from this as well. You know, Varis just mentioned, like, everybody needs to know about what they should be looking for. I completely agree. You know, this can affect you at home too. The ransomware and threat actors are unabashed. If you're, you know, if you have some money in your bank account, they're going to try and get after it. And criminals, what we've seen from the criminal groups, are lazy. They are going after the easiest marks or targets. If you push back a little bit, you know, you're probably going to be better off. The analogy is, it's like getting chased by a bear. Just don't be the slowest. So the training aspect is very, very important. Patching cadence, you know, it's funny now, we're seeing some of the threat groups out of Russia get targeted. Some of the Russian companies get targeted. There's a division of Anonymous that's actually hacking them back and taking out certain targets within Russia. And if you read the actual threat notices, because they post them on Twitter, what they've done, a lot of it is that they're not patching their systems. Same thing happens in North America, US, Canadian companies. Patching cadence is very important. It is it's the first way in. And if it's a known vulnerability, it will be exploited. Endpoint detection tools, that we recognize the challenge for small business with endpoint detection and next-gen EDR tools, endpoint detection and response, is that they haven't truly been democratized yet for small business and micro business. They have been typically more expensive. You're in you're anywhere from $50 to $100 per user per year. They are very effective, especially when there's logging functionality that comes out of it, because you can find out, the forensics teams can find out the who, what, where, when, why, and how much quicker by plugging in. But we're still, some of the cost implications to businesses are starting to minimize. So it's trending in the right direction. We're now requiring it for organizations that hit certain revenue thresholds and limits. And then email scanning. First line of defense. The HTML slide, awesome. That's we see it all the time. And part of the employee training will be phishing exercises. So actually targeting your own employees. It sounds kind of sadistic, but that's actually the way that people learn. Being able to retrain those who continuously fail. So taking them aside, saying you have to be more vigilant. You have to be looking at it. It's very, very important. And I think I'm at time. So I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has. As mentioned, I tried to focus a little less on insurance, but more so just what is contributing to organizational resilience across in my world.
Greg, thank you so much. Please, round of applause for Greg.
Thank you.
And you are exactly on time, like minute. You're very precise. I like that. So do we have questions from auditorium? Yes? We have a good student here.
Hello. I have the questions. You talked about the minimum requirements about insurance and minimum requirements of hygiene. When you are insuring the companies, do you also check cybersecurity personnel, the background of it? Because I'm talking about the ethics of it. Because there's a lot of organizations that provide certifications, and all of them, they don't have the doctors. We have epistemic society. They have Hippocratic oath. Yes. But cybersecurity specialists as epistemic society, they don't have. So if I fail in one organization, they drop me out. I can also go on another organization, get its certification. So when you're insuring, do you check the cybersecurity's background, the cybersecurity personnel, or something like that? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a terrific question. We do not. And it is something that should happen. You look at overall, one of the things we're working off of a defined application. And so for small business, if you're a small or micro business, that's typically between 12 and 20 questions that are being answered. Yes, no, And what we see the most often is that it's a CFO that's answering it, because they're ultimately responsible for the money going out to pay for the contract itself. And so when it comes to, and a lot of the security is outsourced. So the managed service providers and managed security service providers that Varis was mentioning are getting a little bit, they don't like showing their work. And so what we are looking at now is all scrutinize MSPs and MSSPs more, because at the end of the day, if they're not returning the application, if they're not validating that this work has been done, then the business should know about it. The business owner should know about it. It's the complacency, and you're absolutely right. It's a bit of the wild, wild west out there when it comes to security. And is there any sort of validation? We have different certifications that need annual requirements being met. So you've got ISO 27001, like Varis' slide, but at the same time, compliance does not equal security. It's just a contributor towards it. But it shows that from a governance perspective, the business is taking it seriously, and that's what I try to get down to, is this just a tick box exercise for someone, or are they genuinely concerned about how they're doing this within their business's operating model? And if the answer to the second part is yes, they're probably a company that I will want in my portfolio.
Okay, thank you so much. Other questions? Let me then ask maybe about two things. One, first question is about COVID. Do you see any major shifts during the COVID time? And the second question would be, do you see special initiatives from a government perspective, parliament perspective, to educate the broader society on cyber hygiene, cyber resilience as such, and do things like that? Just a comparison, maybe comparative experience from Canada.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So to answer the first question, we saw a massive swing in claims figures. So Q2 2020, the insurance industry's loss metrics went up to above 600% losses. So that's $6 out for every dollar taken in by insurance. So what caused that? Well, the mass migration and the stress of labor and the stress that it put on networks. So a lot of this was through phishing tactics. And so clicking on links that you shouldn't, that was caused by a lack of training. And so the response to that has been a few of those minimum hygiene controls that have come in. So not every insurance company is doing this the same way that I am, but those for us, again, we want to see the training. We want to see that people know if you're going to work remotely, perfect. That's awesome. You can offer your employees that sort of flexibility. But we want to make sure that they're not falling victims to, they're not the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, for these criminals. So in response to that, we've seen the loss ratios start to normalize and go down. But the reality is in Canada, we're still losing about 50 cents on every dollar that the insurance industry puts out to the contracts. So something needs to continuously change. Price will be adversely affected in that way. So there's still 50%. There's still 50-cent rate movement that can happen. There's other underwriting levers that can be pulled, like limits being reduced, so we're not putting up as much money when something does happen. So instead of 5 million, maybe we're putting 1 million up. So that's one, and the other is retentions or deductibles increasing, so companies having to put more skin in the game, so to speak. The second part of your question, the Canadian government is recognizing that this is an issue. I speak with a number of our federal folks, and in 2018, our federal government invested $500 million into the cybersecurity space, and what we saw was a new publicly facing body come out of it called the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity. And they do some great advocacy work. They're working alongside, they have different industry sectors and different industry sector experts that the people that are monitoring and protecting the networks can ask questions to go back to. There's a lot of collaboration that's starting to happen, but could it be better? Absolutely. We can always be better. But it's Rome wasn't built in a day, and we're seeing a lot more collaboration amongst Canadian companies, critical infrastructure, but we've still got a long way to go.
Thank you so much. I guess to be on time, we need to move on.
Yep.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Please, you can take the seat and then
Thank you,
join the panel as well if you want to.
Yeah.
So we have to move forward. So if we can put those people who joined remotely on the screen, that would be great. And while our technical help is doing that, let me announce the members of the panel today who will join us on stage. So first of all, let's start with those who are in place. Professor Tatiana Volkova, so is a professor of strategic management, innovation management, strategic ECT governance, and leading researcher at the BA School of Business and Finance here in Riga, Latvia. Welcome. Then we have here in place Māris Anģāns, Director at Center for Geopolitical Studies Riga, Associate Professor at Riga Znotiņš University. Māris, please take a seat. And remotely we have two participants as well. First of all, Patrick Melder, who is Chief Security Officer of Retail Partners. Retail Partners. Patrick is also cyber threat and vulnerability lead in Corteva, where he leads the company's threat intelligence and vulnerability management programs. And he's a lead instructor for cyber intelligence at Evolve Security Academy. And Patrick is doing a lot of other things, also helping Estonian defense forces with some cybersecurity training and so on. And so doing a lot of good work and professionally, and also in his spare time. Then we have the last but not least, we have one of the best known cybersecurity actors in Latvia, Kirill Solovjovs. So Kirill is a founder of IT security company Possible Security, and he's I think the best characteristics for Kirill is that he's the most visible white hacker in Latvia. Also getting some high-level places with his team in global competitions and helping NATO with some of the things, and also doing research on the subject. So very experienced person here on the panel as well. So thank you all for finding time, and let's start with maybe with reflections to keynote speakers. So what do you think? Maybe let's start with Māris Anģāns. So we had Varis previously talking about the climate, how we see the climate, and also the changes in global security, let's say, in the region. So talking about the Russian threat, active cyber attacks since 2007 and so on. How you as a researcher on the topic, how do you see the dynamics of these relationships?
Oh yeah, thank you. Great to be here with you. I hope the mic is working well. And I think it was fantastic presentations, both of the presentations. I think it's on. I hope it is. So on Varis' presentation, I think Latvia is in safe hands, to start with, because this year CERT.LV celebrated its 11th, if I'm right, birthday. So it's 1 decade, and I think indeed Latvia is in good hands. And that's why I'm not surprised that there haven't been significant incidents. Of course, there have been, not all of them have been made public, but, the general society has not often, seen effects of some malign activities. There hasn't been anything like 2007 in Estonia, which was also mentioned one of the question makers here. So that is one point. On a larger scale, we have also Estonian. Patrick here, the beloved enemies, 3 Baltic states. We always like to compare, each of us. And unfortunately, Latvia lags behind in international ratings when it comes to cybersecurity. You take the ITU rating, there is another one, Estonia rating, and then you have the Belfer Center, Harvard University, and, you will not find Latvia above Estonia, Lithuania. So I think there is still space for progress for Latvia, to speak a bit more on its achievements, to be more active in global scale. And on your question on global scale, well, it's quite complex. The internet has transformed quite a lot since, beginning of 2000s when, it grew steadily, when, it was full of idealism. The internet will connect the world, that it will spread the freedom, democracy. So what we have seen, it's quite the opposite currently. It's the cyberspace is increasingly fragmented. We have China, basically two superpowers. You have the United States with all the products, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, so on and on. And then you have China, of course, which is the second powerhouse of cyberspace. And there are other countries like Russia, which is huge in terms of territory, but not in other ways. And it is also in ways disconnecting itself, from the global cyberspace. So cyberspace is, it's changing, the way things are done. And of course, Russia is definitely, the main malign actor here when it comes to region, but it's not only about Russia. The meaning of borders is much less significant in cyberspace. So I think, China still remains there. We shouldn't forget about it, about its interest and about its capabilities. So there's going to be more of China, across the globe and also here. So that's in general terms. And also a quick reflection to Canada. First of all, I think we should appreciate also the role of Canada's military here. This year will mark the 5th anniversary since Canada leads the NATO Enhanced Forward Presence Battle Group with several hundred soldiers here. So that's much appreciated here, at least by the most of Latvians. So please spread the word that your soldiers here are an important asset, and we hope that they will stay here for long. And also on the topic of the insurance, I think this is awesome. That such industry or sub-industry is developing, because I think it gives a safety net for corporate players. For those have done everything possible to avoid the negative consequences, so they have some kind of safety net. And at the same time, I think it also stimulates security. Thinking about cyber hygiene, which is quite important. So that's all from me, at least while opening.
Thank you, Maris. All those Estonians. We hate to compare ourselves to Estonians, but we love to hear and learn the best experiences. So, Patrick, maybe you can lead us to what Estonians did not so well in 2007, which some of the speakers are referring here, and what are you doing so well here today that you are climbing the steps and increasing your cyber resilience.
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the invitation to join the conference, Reinis, and it's a pleasure to share the stage with several Latvians that I've also had the pleasure of working with before, including Varis and Maris as well. So I'll provide a little bit of context. The fact that I'm coming to you all from Chicago over the internet is nice, but I'll also try to speak to the US as well as the Estonian experience. I think the first reaction that I'd like to have, and that I think all these conversations need to revolve around, is the threat landscape, like Varis presented for us, and especially changes in the threat landscape as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So the best report that I've seen, the most detailed information on this subject, is a Microsoft report, special report on Ukraine. And just to summarize a 40-page report for you all, this is really the first cyber war, I think, that the world has ever seen. So we have, at least according to Microsoft, at least 240 cyber operations, including 40 destructive attacks where attackers are not just trying to steal data, but also destroy data and systems, conducted by at least 7 actors connected to the Russian nation-state intelligence agencies, including the use of 8 types of destructive wiper malware, which is something that you may see once or twice in a normal year, and at least one case of a new malware designed to target operational technology or industrial control systems, which once again attempted to cause an electrical blackout in Ukraine. So I think this geopolitical context should really frame our conversation around cyber resilience in the region as well as around the world too. We also have to deal, of course, with criminal attacks. I see this on a daily basis at my company, which is a US but a global Fortune 500 company. We're targeted on a regular basis, but these criminal attackers are targeting thousands, if not tens of thousands of companies at the same time in their phishing attacks in order to gain initial access to corporate environments. And of course, we can't avoid the ransomware topic, which was brought up earlier as well by one of the keynote speakers. This is definitely the biggest criminal scourge out there. Ransomware attackers are getting faster in their deployment of ransomware. They're developing new business models, including using things like DDoS attacks in addition to encrypting data. They're also leveraging data leaks in order to pressure companies to pay, and ultimately are finding more and more ways to continue to extort companies at the same time as conducting ransomware attacks. So this is definitely a complex threat landscape that we live in. Latvia, Estonia, the United States, the threat level is high across the board. When it comes to cyber resilience, of course, Estonia and the United States and Latvia are different. Every company, in a sense, takes a different approach. What I would say is that it's important to think about 3 things: before the attack, during the attack, and after the attack. So whether it's your small business facing an attack or whether it's an entire government facing an attack, it's important before the attack to think about people, processes, and technology. So trying to do your best to hire and train the best people, starting from universities, maybe even starting from younger. In Estonia, we're starting to invest very heavily in younger people, and there's some cool organizations that are doing things like the Cyber Battle of Estonia to try to get young people involved in ethical hacking and understanding offensive and defensive security from a very young age. We also have to think about training, like security awareness training, including phishing attacks for your own employees. This is a really important part of cyber resilience before the attack, and also keeping your employees and your personnel motivated with the right kinds of salary packages and understanding the competition that there is for security talent around the world is really important. In terms of processes before the attack too, you can have excellent defensive measures in place, the right people in place, but you also need to organize their efforts in the right way. So this starts with the national strategy, of course, and goes all the way down to policies at the individual corporate level in order to make sure that your teams are working in the right direction, that you have very straightforward technical standards that you are trying to meet, and that you don't leave simple holes like the ones that Varis mentioned. I don't know if we want to get to the technical level of Active Directory and remote desktop protocol here anymore, but I'm happy to dive down there as well. And then, of course, thinking about the technology before the attack as well. And Greg mentioned a lot of the various basic hygiene technologies that are necessary, from email to backup technologies to multi-factor authentication. I think all of those are really key. During the attack, of course, we saw this in Estonia in 2007, but we see it in companies around the world that are getting hit by ransomware attacks. You need to have a plan, practice the plan, test the plan, but then be ready when the attack does come, because it's only a matter of time, really. Criminals are opportunistic. They will target anybody that they can. They'll scan the internet for vulnerabilities. It doesn't matter whether you're Canadian, Estonian, Latvian, American. If they find an opportunity, they will, in some cases in an automated fashion too, get that initial access through phishing or through exploiting externally available services and vulnerabilities. And they will proceed to try to look around the environment, see what kind of data is available, and and ultimately steal that data, perhaps encrypt it if they gain sufficient access. And it's really important during the attack to have that plan in place, to have practiced that plan, to have an incident commander, to have a task force, to have executive understanding of that attack. This is once again true at the country level as well as the corporate level. And you need to make sure that you have taken care of other aspects of a major cyber attack as well. It's not just a technical matter, it's a matter for media, PR, legal, and so on. And of course, after the attack, you need to understand what lessons you've learned from this, fix any, remediate any technical things that may have enabled this kind of attack, try to improve your defenses as much as possible. And of course, you know, you can try to do this at the national level, but it's really, I think, up to every single organization to try to enhance their own cyber resilience and to test that cyber resilience. So I would recommend, you know, tabletop exercises to test these kinds of plans, but I would also recommend offensive security, so ethical hacking. So good guys that are essentially paid in order to test systems and processes and attack in an organized and contractually obligated ethical way, so that we can together solve big cybersecurity holes before attackers get to them. And you know, all of this, I'm hoping Krills will speak on that a little bit more too, as the most famous ethical hacker maybe in Latvia, as was mentioned in the introduction. But I think Varis and Greg did an excellent job of setting a stage for what is the threat landscape, what kind of insurance and other measures for cyber resilience can help us with that. Countries have done a very different job of implementing that. But really, I think the ultimate responsibility has to lie with every organization to take care of their own security. And I'm happy to dive into that further during the course of the discussion as well.
Yep. Thank you, Patrick. A lot of good points. Thank you for mentioning those, and also, yes, a broad experience. I was more mentioning your social activities, let's say, but let's not forget working for top 5 Fortune 500 company and then covering some cyber related topics is probably brings a lot of valuable experience, and appreciate all the points you shared. You talked about, Patrick, actually about education and the importance of education from early ages, but going also into universities and educating people there. So I'll give floor to Professor Volkova, who is here leading the cybersecurity education also in BA School of Finance, and is teaching at the cybersecurity master's level programs. How do you see the importance of education and the landscape, please?
Thank you so much, and really being here and hearing so many topics and so many directions which need to be addressed in order to ensure the cyber resilience on individual, on society, on organization levels. You know, there are so many topics which need to be not only taught, but also to be implemented later on in organizations. And really, BA School of Business and Finance is delivering, it's among one of universities in Latvia which deliver master program on cybersecurity governance and management related topics. And we discovered that there is a really gap what is need to be closed among understanding that cybersecurity, it's not only technical issue, but it's really everyone's job in organization. And when we are discussing with students who are coming from industry and also government organizations and military organizations, this is really being confirmed that there is a room for improvement in all directions. And what we are mainly concerned is that there is not enough research done in this area. What's really happening on the level of organizations? Students are struggling with getting data from the industry as well, because it's not so transparent and companies don't like to communicate about, maybe thinking that it would not bring good image about the company. But education is very important in order to ensure that companies rethink their approaches, policies, processes, and also communication with their employees and among board and with management. And this is still need to be raised awareness about all these issues which have been highlighted by you. And when it comes to insurance, we also did some research, and in Latvia it's still room for improvement, and there is a lack of such services. There is one foreign company which offers such insurance, and we know that there is a future for that as well. So we have to learn from you in Canada how you are doing to overcome this resistance, and maybe also not willingness to contribute some money for this insurance. But at the end of the day, all are winners. Yes, companies which go through this investigation and also society in large. Yeah, there are many topics, but hope we will discuss further. Thank you.
Yes, so let's spice it up a bit. Let's give a floor to Kirill Solovyos, and then we already talked about Latvian Estonian competition and a lot of hate relationships, right? Now, just saying, Kirill is actually one of the people who developed the. I would like to say the first e-parliament system in the world that we used here in Latvian Parliament. And so obviously involved a lot of cybersecurity issues and then cybersecurity safeguard systems. So yeah, I would like to say that in this case we beat the Estonians in timing. Kirill, what do you think, and how do you see the maybe from private side, how do you see the companies also reacting to the changing landscape and all the challenges we have?
Thank you. You know, I have to address what you mentioned regarding the parliament system. Estonians actually helped us confirm that ours was the first, since they made theirs half a year later and published an article saying that Estonia is #1. So then we understood, okay, so we must have been #1. But Estonians do what I miss in Latvia. What I'd like to copy from Estonians is really the education part. Having youngsters as young as, I don't know, 7, maybe 5 years old, learning about cybersecurity, not just because globally there is and will continue to be lack of availability of specialists, but also because even if the person decides to go and pursue career in non-cybersecurity or even non-IT field, it is still useful for that person and for their employer that they do know cybersecurity. Now, the main thing you can do to build cyber resilience, I think, is to be prepared. The private sector, sorry. The private sector, you know, back in 2007, when the Estonian incident happened, the Tallinn incident happened in 2009, when Latvian tax authority was hacked here in Latvia, that's when the state started actually putting some work into and trying to catch the private sector, because private sector was way ahead. Compared to today, it was still really low, the preparedness, but it was way ahead. And now these days, I'd say that for a couple of years now, the governmental sector has been, on average, protected, well protected. So for private sector, we do still see some cases when a company calls us to investigate an incident, and it turns out, yeah, it's too late. All we can do right now, you know, let's pull the plug on the internet. We've had cases like that. Let's pull the plug and let's investigate how far the ransomware has propagated on your network. Let's take a look. Let's try to recover the key. But working that way, working reactively rather than proactively in IT security, it will not give the customer any advantage, right? If possible, and we really would like to stress that being prepared is really, really important, and it goes for both private sector and state sector now. for some time now, for a couple of years now, we've been offering our customers both classic penetration test, where we try to find all the possible vulnerabilities in a system and get recommendations how to fix them. And we also been offering so-called red teaming test, which means that instead of trying to find everything, we just try to pretend to be a bad actor. You know, a ransomware group doesn't need to find all your vulnerabilities, and they just need to get in somehow, right? Just find one way. And I think this year, starting January, is the first time when demand for red teaming has been higher than for penetration testing, and that's good because those actually try to accomplish two different things, right? Red teaming actually looks at what Varis talked about, and I think Patrick also mentioned that. Are you prepared? Do you have the personnel? Are they ready? Do you have the technology, and do you have the processes, and how you react? So that's actually, I would say it beats tabletop exercises in effectiveness. It is of course a different tool, but that's something that should be really used, I believe. Now, to reflect on the cyber insurance presentation, I've been approached. So I've had my company for a bit more than 9 years now, I think. And I've been approached through the years by different insurance specialists here in Latvia with offers to try and build a package for cyber insurance. Now, none of those worked out, so I'm not sure if in Latvia we even have proper cyber insurance available. Like if someone wanted to buy cyber insurance, would that be possible? So that's a blind spot for me, but I have a feeling that it's not really there. It's not really happening yet. So that's something that needs to be achieved still. But I do believe that actually the highest benefit, as the speakers already mentioned, the highest benefit of cyber insurance is actually getting your stuff together. So actually making sure that you're secure, because of course insurance companies don't want to lose money. So they'll try to make sure that as much as possible you will not get hacked, rather than you getting hacked and then they have to pay you the compensation. So that I believe is the immediately positive part of cyber insurance. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Now maybe a couple of shorter questions that you can respond to from your relative experiences. So maybe a ransomware. Maybe you can tell in a couple of words, maybe the craziest story you have heard about paying or not paying ransomwares. Should companies do that? Let's start with you, Greg. I guess you have some experience in that.
Yeah. Well, it's evolved slightly just in terms of whether you can or can't pay in the first place now. You know, Canadian companies, the advice from law enforcement is never to pay. You know, you don't ever want to be seen as supporting these criminal groups, but there are certain circumstances where you just really don't have a choice. And from an insurance perspective, you have to look at it on a cost-benefit analysis. So if this company is making millions of dollars per year and they're going to be down for months, or their infrastructure is completely ruined and you're facing full, you know, the existential threat of your business, of the business collapsing itself, and the insurance company's on the hook for tens of millions of dollars, then the demand is $25,000 in Bitcoin, you're probably going to consider paying that a little bit quicker. We've paid ransoms. I mean, right now where things are at is the United States has what's called the Office of Foreign Asset Control, which is a division of the U.S. Treasury Group. They have sanctions listings across different, across all different countries too, and some of the threat actors that we're seeing and the sub-criminal groups are being added to those groups. So the threat groups that are knownly affiliated with some of the different countries are on those groups. So if in the forensics evaluation of what during the ransomware threat, you may not even be able to pay for it. I mean, in Canada, the insurance companies, a lot of that money is still US-based money. And so if that money is tied to supporting what is deemed to be a terrorist organization through the payment of an extortion demand, the insurance company will just say, no, we can't. We legally cannot pay this. And then it comes down to the business owners on whether or not they are going to pay it. But if you are doing any business in the United States and you would like to continue doing that, that is a criminal-based, like it can have criminal implications against your organization. So Canadian companies are just sort of starting to wake up to that a little bit. But the craziest ones that we've, one of the insurance companies out of the US just got hit for $40 million last year. And they paid it. So it's out there. Yeah.
The insurance company becomes victim itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Patrick, any interesting stories on this front?
I can't speak to my company's experience, but I'll speak about it a little bit from the training perspective. So I'm an instructor for cyber intelligence at a boot camp where we try to essentially take professionals from other fields, including in my case, for example, I went through the boot camp myself and I was a diplomat in Estonia before I went into the technical cybersecurity side. And one of the things that I do in my module in this boot camp is essentially try to conduct a training exercise that prepares students for dealing with ransomware attacks or destructive attacks. So they'll have roughly 45 minutes to an hour, and they'll be divided up into teams of security analysts, and they'll be faced with a scenario where we have either a criminal or a nation state attacker. Essentially, we rely on, like the case that the previous gentleman, Greg, mentioned, real life scenarios, realistic attacks, where we will have them run through different phases of a ransomware attack, starting with initial access, going through lateral movement by the attacker inside of the organization, to ultimately the attacker getting domain administrator credentials and having access to the entire environment. And then the security analyst and the students have to essentially react to, try to understand, and try to figure out exactly what's going on in this attack, present reports about how it's happening, why it's happening, figure out what ways they can use to remediate these attacks. And they learn a lot about, what are the different kinds of ways that attackers get in, whether they're through supply chain attacks, where some kind of software update has provided the attacker with initial access, or whether it's a phishing attack where, 4 employees have clicked on a link that ultimately, through a rather long infection chain, downloads some malware onto the system, and then, the malware beacons out to command and control servers. The attackers download additional tools onto the first system, start exploring and moving around the rest of the environment. And ultimately all the way through to the scenario of whether or not they should pay and what kind of considerations are present for that, and try to understand the attacker's motivations and the attacker's modus operandi, so to say. So I won't go into specific cases, but I can say that, it's important to take these real world cases and train your students to understand both the technical as well as the strategic implications of these major parts of the threat landscape, so that they'll be better prepared for the scenarios, and help their companies become more, or their government organizations become more cyber resilient, prepare better, be able to respond better, and ultimately learn lessons from these kinds of attacks in the future.
Okay, thank you. Kirill, you have worked with a lot of private companies as well. How do you see the how they look at this, and how is the learning curve for those companies? Are they becoming more resilient and less likely to pay, or there is still a middle ground possible?
Well, I want to mention a case that one of our clients had, and how it often happens is that even though the threat actor is in the network and encrypts everything they can, they want to receive separate payment for every system they encrypted. So in that case, the customer had half a dozen servers encrypted, but also had many laptops and desktops encrypted. So in that case, in a theory, a customer could of course choose to decrypt, to pay the ransom for some systems and not pay for the others. But basically, what we advise customers in this situation is always the same. Of course, we are not the police. We're not gonna look down on a customer that decides to pay the ransom. It's not up to us to decide. It's their data and their reputation on the line. But we do offer some things that they can do in the future now that the attack has happened, and also with the benefit of hindsight, we do offer some things that they could have done better, could have done more correctly. The good thing, one of the tools that I believe Europol is behind. So Europol, together with multiple anti-malware vendors, have this project called nomoreransom.org, I believe, and I really love the project. Basically, working together, they are able to provide free decryptors for different ransomware. Now, obviously, you will rarely be able to immediately decrypt the files for free, but sooner or later it's going to happen. And I really admire how they do that, how it happens. So many of the cases, in some cases, they simply crack the encryption if it's not resilient enough, the attacker's encryption. But in some other cases, they would actually go and physically arrest the ransomware group. They would find where they are, they would arrest them, they would impound their servers and find all the keys in there, and then create a tool for the global society that can decrypt that for free. So that's something to keep in mind. But of course, you will not get the decryptor right then and there. You might have to wait 1 month, maybe 2 months, maybe a year. So it may happen. But the most common, so looking in hindsight, the most common mistake that we see is online backups. So backups that are connected permanently to the servers, right? So when a ransomware group comes into the server, they will try to encrypt everything they can see, including attached USB storage, including network drives. And so that is a really common mistake. You must have the backups not connected. I think Greg mentioned that in his presentation as well. So the backups cannot be permanently connected to where you store the data. Otherwise, it's no use, right? They will just delete or encrypt everything.
Okay, thank you, Kirill. Okay, let's switch to a different topic since we are fastly coming to the end of our time here. But I still want to at least focus on one question, and one of the things that have been discussed by the speakers here and also panelists is basically a cyber resilient culture as a basis for society, I guess. So education on different levels and understanding about cyber threats as such. Maris, you have also worked on helping with establishing different conferences and educating on these issues. Having a broader exposure of this also in public media. So we also talked about this. How do you see? Is that what we need? Do we need more exposure in to attract more attention from people to be more cyber resilient society?
Oh yeah, I totally agree with what was told also, by Kirill's, where we still have a space for progress here in Latvia, but not only in Latvia. I think Latvia in general is good. That's the education and widespread understanding in the society of the risks that the cyberspace pertains. And it has to be an integrated ecosystem. All the society, government, and everything else. It has to be a part of everything. Education from early years, and also, I must also commend the Bangkok School, for having the cybersecurity MA program. That's fantastic, because when I worked for the government some 10 or so years ago, and then we started to make the national cybersecurity system, then politicians usually thought, oh, IT, this is, the IT guys, sitting behind the computers. But no, it is extremely important that, politicians, civil servants, and then CEOs and other workers of the companies, that everybody understands, at least the basics of cybersecurity. At the same time, on the other side of the coin, I think, everyone has margins. You cannot ask, every member of the society to be vigilant, and to know everything. I think it was also, a good example about the HTML emails and, some other emails also what Greg, I think, mentioned. But, you cannot expect that every single individual will be able to protect himself because, also the malign players, they're also getting better, the phishing emails are getting better in the language. So in that sense, I think there are always margins, that there's more responsibility for the governments and for the companies. Because you will not be able always to ask from the society, okay, that we are members are under-educated. There's more to be done from the government and also companies.
Sure, thank you. And Professor Volkov, how do you see it in a company level, on management level? So you're educating management level people to become also cyber resilient and understand what the cyber threats bring to the company. How do you see the shift maybe in Latvian enterprise, like on enterprise level? Are there more people on managing boards, etc., with understanding of cyber resilience? Yeah.
We hope that our graduates bring this culture within organizations. That's why they've been educated here for 1.5 or even 2 years. But of course, if he sees the efforts, what is done on all levels and coming also from CERT and mass media, which pays attention also to this issue, it's all our common efforts. But of course, we have to think that there are small and medium companies and micro companies dominating in our country, and that's why many of such services could be outsourced, and this cybersecurity industry is growing in Latvia as well. But I have positive outlook because awareness is rising. And since this cyber resilience is becoming more and more complex, it's a real ecosystem which has to be built in partnerships. And this is also contribution of professionals who are organizing cybersecurity conferences regularly. It means this awareness is built up, but still a lot of need to be done. Tomorrow I will deliver a presentation on the research findings among small and medium companies, and it's in ICT sectors that there is also not up to the highest level of maturity. It's only on the second stage. So work needs to be done. But complementing what's been said about education of society in general, I recently returned from Poland, and it was a third age university. So seniors are coming at the university in the evening on the lifelong learning programs, which have been supported by municipality. So we have competence and also willingness to do so. We need to think broader to cover different age groups, because in schools they are already delivering those topics about cyber literacy, but seniors need to be not left behind. Thank you.
An excellent point. Thank you. Okay, so we are running out of time. I'll give a chance for auditorium to ask one question. So one question only. Who first raises the hand? The question is yours. So don't take too long. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Question? No questions? Yeah, there is a question. Very good.
Actually, I'm not aware of how cybersecurity works, to be very honest. But I would like to ask a question like, what can be insured, and what are the areas can be protected? Just a general question from my side.
I mean, from my view, and on the small, medium size, and micro business side, and I'm speaking specific to Canada, our organizations, I would say 60% of them aren't insurable for this risk in their current state. Probably more. I'm probably being a little optimistic at 60%, but I think the focus is on the resilience, where we're going, and what companies can do to tackle some of this low-hanging risk. But the reason that these companies aren't insurable too, I mean, the insurance industry hasn't done ourselves any favors in Canada. We've skipped 2 general steps out of 3 when it comes to enterprise risk management. Like the 3 steps in the ERM process are assess, control, then transfer. And we've skipped right to transfer, seeing dollar signs. And it's critical that the assessment, so assess, make aware, look at what's going on, and then control. You know, you've found out what risks you do have within your business. Now you focus on controlling what you can, and then you transfer anything that you can't. So when I look at it that, you know, the hygiene guidance and the hygiene elements aren't being met, that it's, you know, I think we're skipping a couple of steps, and it's leading to companies being uninsurable.
Okay, thank you so much. Just to summarize a couple of things that you mentioned during this discussion. Of course, there's, especially in Latvia, we live in a place where there's increasing threats, but also elsewhere, as we see, and the societies are not completely prepared for all of this. So education is the key, and then starting, as Patrick mentioned, from early age, and then also Kirill's referred to this, so starting at early age, as early as 6, 7 of age, then going, of course, this is more or less implemented. Cyber resilience, cyber hygiene education is implemented mostly in high school level and so on. But then also not forgetting about this in higher education, and going as far as Professor Volkova mentioned, also educating seniors about these threats that we see from cyber threats. Yeah. Then some of the good things to educate yourselves, I guess, for listeners. Patrick mentioned that the Microsoft report is a great resource to read, right? Have more education on this. So Greg covered very broad, like, and interesting facts on cyber insurance. This is definitely that companies can use here in Baltic states, and then Canada has also improvement to be done there. And then, of course, let's not forget media PR, which is important to educate the broader society, as some of the panelists here also said that this is not only the professional's job, but this is the cyber hygiene is everyone's job. So don't forget to talk about this, and then I guess so our leaders in cybersecurity also need to be vocal and talk about this as much as possible on conferences and events like this to educate people. Those were some of the points. Of course, there were many great points mentioned, and I hope somebody will summarize all of them. But it was definitely my honor to have such educated and such experienced panelists here today with me. Thank you all for finding the time, and I hope you had an interesting discussion as well. So thank you, and then let's be in touch for the further discussions and conferences. Thank you.